Hey there, CPO here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to adjust this JKS Adjustable Track Bar into a 2004 TJ Jeep Wrangler. Let's do it. All right, so the first thing you have to do is remove the old track bar. Now I've already done this. I actually was working away on this before I realized I was going to do a video for you. So removing the stock track bar is a pretty trivial process. Probably the most challenging part for some of you will be getting this frame side loosened up. So that's going to be up here like this. There's a castle nut on top, and there's a cotter pin. So you're going to have to remove the cotter pin, loosen up the castle nut, and this is a tapered stud. So when it's tightened in there, once you loosen it up, it's not going to just drop out like that. You're going to need some sort of a method to get that off. Now, sometimes people will take the castle nut, turn it upside down, thread it on a few threads, hit that with a hammer or something. What I prefer to do, I have this ball joint spreader tool. I actually used this in another video recently. You can check that out. That was on removing the link off of this right here, the sway bar. Use the same tool in here, and actually in this case use it more like a pickle tool, where I set that fork in there, hit it with a hammer, and eventually it just popped that out. So that's how I got to this point. And then of course the axle side over here is basically this outfit. You've got a bolt and a flag nut. Pull those down. You're going to need to reuse that. You're not going to need this castle nut again though, because the JKS Adjustable Track Bar is going to come with new frame side mounting hardware. All right, so I have already done one thing, and that is install this Zerk fitting onto here. It comes in the little parts bag. It's just going to go right on there. I think it was just an 8mm wrench, I believe I used to get that on there. Go ahead and get that on there. You don't have to do it now, but you definitely want to do it at some point, so why not now? So before we do the install, let's look at how the orientation of this is going to go. It's basically going to go like this. You can see that the top piece has a section that extends above, whereas the bottom is sort of flush. Hopefully that's making sense there. The Zerk's going to point outwards, and this hoop is going to push up and away from the differential. And it's going to go up just like that. Now in the kit, you've got this 9/16 inch bolt, which is going to go from the bottom up through, just like that. And then you have this tapered sleeve, which is going to point, it's going to taper from wider to narrower going up, basically to simulate the tapered stud. Then once you get it through up into there, you're going to have a flat washer on top and then this self-locking nut. But the problem we're going to have before we get started with this, let me just show you. So this 9/16 inch bolt that's going to go up through here fits in the bottom, but doesn't fit all the way through. So we're going to have to take a drill and drill that out so that this bolt can get all the way up through that bracket. So unfortunately, in order to drill this out, we need to get this tie rod out of the way. There's not a great way to get this down in here and get a straight shot. It's close, but not straight enough. All right, now that we've got that pesky tie rod out of the way, we can go back to drilling out our hole. Beautiful. All right, now that tie rod can go back in. Kind of a pain in the butt, but it's not difficult. Tie rod's back on. All right, so before I go ahead and mount this track bar, I put the tires on so I could set the Jeep on the ground. because when you do that track bar adjustment, you want to be at ride height. Also, I went ahead and stabbed the axle side bolt through just to secure that. And then basically what I've been doing is untwisting the track bar to lengthen it until it roughly aligns with that frame side track bar mount right there. And what I'm trying to do is get it as close to being adjusted before I bolt it in, so I don't have to do a lot of trial and error work. So in order to ensure that the axle is straight underneath the Jeep, I'm doing a couple things. You can see here I have a magnet holding a thread down to a washer. Give you some light here. And that is hanging over the tire. And I've got the same exact thing on the other side. See right there. And so it's important to note that the thread, this thread line is actually the same distance on both sides. I measured from the middle of the top of this side marker light. It's 14 inches across, and it turns out to be roughly just right over the axle line, which is what I want. And what I can do is compare how this thread is hanging, not so much the washer, but how the thread is hanging in comparison to the tire treads. So this particular tire's kind of got an interesting pattern. You can see there's a like a seam right there, and it's really close in alignment to where my thread is hanging. So what I'm doing is I'm actually sighting down this thread. Of course, it's moving around right now. And I'm just going until the thread is straight up and down with the edge of the fender, and then looking at where that lines up. And if you look, it's exactly on that little seam. So if I see the same thing on the other side, I know that I'm fairly well lined up. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to sight down. Again, I'm just looking, so you see that thread there? When it's straight up and down, and then where's that seam? Boom, right under it. So I am pretty confident that my axle is centered perfectly underneath this Jeep. Now, how did I get to this point? Well, it's simple. So basically, I came in here and I shook the steering wheel. And basically, that's going to wiggle wobble everything, and it's going to naturally want to fall into place. See how the tire stays on the ground? Everything else sort of moves around. And once that settles, it should be pretty close to a natural center point. We'll cheat. I'll slow that down. Come back over here. Find my thread. Sight down my thread. Boom, yep. And it hits right on that seam. Let's go look at the other side again. Slow this guy down. Find my thread. Sight down the thread, and yep, right on that. So with that in mind, I know now, like I said, my axle's centered. So when I extend the length of that track bar to where it fits in the holes perfectly, it's probably going to be fairly well adjusted right the first time. Now, if you're not so fortunate like me to have a seam that's in the right spot, you can use any other like lug, tread patterns, or you can get a measurement from one of the sharp edges of the tire, and you can mark it with a piece of chalk or a Sharpie or something as you develop it. But I'm just fortunate that that seam happens to be in the right spot on both sides for me. So anyway, let's button up this track bar now. All right, so I have already put anti-seize on this bolt, so if I do it right, I should come out looking like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. That's how you know you've got enough anti-seize. And remember, this tapered sleeve is going to go with the skinnier side up because it's going to fit into that tapered hole. Once I have that in place, I can work this up here. Now you'll notice the bolt doesn't fit that way, but if I drop it down, and then this self-locking nut. All right, after I got that top side mounted, I went ahead and double checked my alignment. It's still good with it where it is, so I think I've got it right. I'm gonna go ahead, Put some anti-seize on this. This is the factory track bar bolt. Reslip it back through. I'll add that flag nut into the mix. Now we can tighten up this jam nut. I'm going to use a little bit of blue thread locker on it. I don't want that to go anywhere once I get it tightened down. All right, we'll see if that'll hold. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is grease this guy. All right, we are good to go. So that's it. That's the installation of the JKS Adjustable Track Bar in a Jeep TJ Wrangler. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.